a true champion. I'm a true champion.
Welcome to the FedR8tion. Compete on the global stage while at home, a new route to the esports scene. Enter tournaments, crush your opponents, and take home the prize pools. Or create your own tournaments and take a cut of the prize pool instead. The FedR8tion. Make or save money whilst you play.
Live from iRacing's virtual Mount Washington Auto Road in Coos County, New Hampshire, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to Racecraft TV's live coverage of the Race to the Summit, presented by Bioadaptives and powered by FedR8tion. We're happy to have you this afternoon with us at Racecraft TV as we get set for one of the most unique events that you can get on the sim racing platform, as we welcome you alongside Ian Fisher, our producer Josh Lee, and myself, Evan Pasoko. We are so excited to bring you coverage of this afternoon's race, Josh, and this is one of the newest tracks to the iRacing surface, but I think it goes far beyond just another track. This is a whole new style of racing that has made it to iRacing, and I think one of the most unique events you'll see in this being one of the first major events we're seeing on the mountain.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, Evan. It's not only one of the newest tracks on iRacing, but it is definitely the most unique. You cannot run a regular race on this course. It is all time trials. It is all trying to beat the times of the other drivers as you go up the mountain. This is the only racetrack like this in iRacing, and it really stirred a lot of heads. Everybody trying to put whatever car they could up to the top of the summit. Tonight, we're taking some rallycross supercars up there, so high speed, four-wheel drive, used to both dirt and asphalt. So we're going to see what these drivers can do. A lot of professional rallycross drivers on the iRacing service are here to put themselves to the test.
And towering at 6,288 feet, Mount Washington is the highest peak in the northeastern United States and the sixth highest mountain in all of North America. This auto road was completed back in 1861, stretching 7.6 miles and climbing to more than 4,600 feet of elevation from the base to the summit at a gradient of a little over 11.5%. Now, the road is open to both private vehicles and guided tours, and this car climbed Mount Washington. Bumper stickers can be found all throughout New England. In 1904, the inaugural Mount Washington Hill Climb Auto Race was hosted. Held sporadically over the past century, the Climb to the Clouds is nonetheless the oldest auto race in the country. Its latest revival as a full-blown race came in 2011 as a tri-annual event, and each edition of the race since 1956 has seen a new record time set by the winner, and that's what we're going to be looking to set here tonight, is a record time, Ian, on this iRacing service. These rally cars are made perfect for this, but at least in an iRacing context, we've only really ever seen them on the rallycross tracks, right? A hill climb is certainly a different challenge. It's a kind of sim racing that we've seen in the broader sim community for quite some time, but like I say, first time we get that opportunity here in iRacing.
And you're absolutely right, Evan. It's a whole new challenge as a driver as well, because you're used to racing against other drivers on the service or on the track. And here it's a little bit different. Here you're trying to get up that mountain as fast as you can. And there's a lot more tarmac than there is dirt on this track, but it is definitely, I would say, a rallycross track for sure. It's a lot more reactionary driving than learning those lines and learning every single turn on this course. And I think that's what makes it really exciting for a driver.
And we talked about the cars, we've talked about the track. Let's talk about the format for this one, Josh. Drivers, 16 cars entering tonight's race. Several of them were locked in. Several other drivers had to qualify themselves in. They're going to get 3 runs apiece on the hill. Now, controlled starts will stagger cars by about 40 seconds. And I'm not expecting people to be 40 seconds off on time, so we shouldn't deal with too much, if any, cars actually coming too close to each other on the hill. If you mess up your lap time, you're probably off and into the trees. They're not going to just turn it back on. But we're going to see 3 drivers get a run at it. $500 is on the line to your top finishers, including $350 to our eventual winner. And we were just talking earlier as we were getting ready for this race to get underway, how we expect some of these drivers to kind of take it a bit easier on that first trip, right? Get a time on the board and then use those second and third opportunities to try to find a little bit more speed, which means we should see those times drop as the afternoon goes on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Evan. And as we go through this event, you're going to see this somewhat driver order go up the hill. We had originally 18 drivers. Unfortunately, a handful could not be here tonight, so we're going to run with this some odd 16, and we'll get started with Daniel Eisch, then go through Josh Fox, Bodie Cryer, Adam Alderton, Luke Kraus, Jacob Raffas, Dorian Baptiste, Josh Edmondson, Zach Knowles, Garrett Maines, Tyler Campbell, Connor Parisi, Bo Albert, Tommy Mockenden, Sean Langton, and Christian Steenber. And you can tell just by those 16 names how many of them are iRacing Rallycross World Championship competitors. Great to see a lot of them coming out here to take part into the race to the summit and to see just how strong they are in Rallycross cars off of Rallycross tracks.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of those names here on Racecraft TV in the past with the virtual off-road racing series, Pro 4 Championship, and you mentioned a lot of the drivers in the iRacing Rallycross World Championship. Also, a lot of those drivers have a real-world experience on anything from 2 wheels to 4 wheels and anything in between. And often we talk about veterans, right? I mean, you talk about a rallycross guy. Certainly, Ian, a guy who is in an iRacing Rallycross World Championship may have an upper hand because they know these cars very well. But to the point that you made earlier, this is not a normal race. You're not racing against the cars around you. In fact, you shouldn't be dealing with really any traffic on the racetrack at all. What this is about is driver versus track. So I think it'll be interesting to see if those rallycross guys will really have a dominant advantage to get this afternoon underway, or, because the track is so green, if it's going to be kind of an equal learning curve for everybody.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to see that as well, because you got some, iRacing, eNASCAR guys in there as far as, like Garrett Maines and people like that. But then you also got some guys that you don't really hear about. Danny Aish, he's out there, and they've been putting a lot of time in. Everybody has this whole week. So it's really hard to say who has an advantage and who doesn't. And the hill is a little bit different than a rallycross track. While it is very similar, there are some differences as well. So it's hard to say that a rallycross guy could run away with it, but I will say it's a little bit similar to the discipline overall.
Seen a couple of drivers practicing their fire off there from the Bioadaptives starting line. About a minute until we get underway, and well, hopefully that's not how the afternoon will go for a couple of drivers. Listen, cars are going to end up off track. We're going to have cars off and into the trees. There's going to be cars off and into the rocks closer to the summit. We saw this as well in a practice. Drivers were really pushing, Josh, a couple of corners specifically, just trying to see that little bit of time that they could get. But again, I would expect drivers to be slightly more conservative once we actually put them on the stopwatch, which will be happening here any moment.
Yeah, the first driver we are going to put on the stopwatch tonight is going to be Daniel Aish. So he is going to be the first driver to take a run up here on the Mount Washington Auto Road, and we'll really see what kind of times we're going to be looking at. We're sort of looking at, from the qualifying, that we're expecting times from roughly about the 5-minute mark, a little bit over that. I don't think anybody has gone under that 5-minute mark, at least in qualifying or practices. So we'll see if anybody is able to do that tonight, and expecting a lot of these first round times to be a little bit slower than the times we're going to see in round 2 or 3. I think once we get to that third run for each of these drivers, that is when they are all going to fire out of a cannon and be aiming at under 5 minutes. Will we see anybody get down there tonight? I'm not sure, but we'll see what happens. Anything can happen when going up the Mount Washington Auto Road.
And if someone's going to be able to do it, it's probably going to be a driver in this field. We say this over and over when it comes to these off-road events and special events on Racecraft TV. Could we truly have the opportunity to watch some of the very best on the service do it? And we are getting ready to get underway. So Daniel Aish will be the first driver to take to the hill this afternoon, his first of 3 different attempts. Now remember, these cars are going to be about 40 seconds apart, so there will be multiple drivers on track at the same time. But again, just based on pace, not expecting many drivers to be overlapping one another. They should have clean road as they race their way up the mountain, and there is a time limit as well should we need it, but thinking that we should be able to get this one in the time limit in about 45 minutes or so. So a couple of drivers loaded in, seeing 15 the total number, ready to line up. Again, Daniel Aish going to be the first driver to head to the racetrack, the motocross / FMX rider out of Australia. Been riding since he's 9 years old. He's had the opportunity to tour in Australia with 7-time world supercross champion Jeremy McGrath, and is now going to have an opportunity to kick us off here for the Race to the Summit, presented by Bioadaptives and powered by FedR8tion. Just waiting on Aish to hit the clock, and we're going to go racing. Nice clear conditions as well this afternoon from virtual New Hampshire. 65 degrees Fahrenheit, actually pretty cool. Track as well going to be nice and cold, so that's really going to help these guys with grip as well. But I mean, we talked about the multiple surfaces as well, and it's something you touched on off at the top as well. It's not just the asphalt. Going to get dirt when we get up there.
Yeah, and the dirt's a little bit different than the rallycross dirt, which I've heard from some of these drivers. And I will say, from driving it myself and my limited experience, I mean, I'm running 6-minute mountain times up here. So these guys are going to be down in the early 5s, and I'd love to be able to do that. But judging from my limited experience, it is a little bit different than the rallycross dirt. It's not as packed down and groomed as you see on rallycross tracks. A little bit more like a gravel, I would say. You kind of slide down it a little bit more. And it has changed from the time that they released the track a little bit. So all these guys are working to really understand that dirt section really well, because that's where you make a lot of your time.
When we talk about the cars as well, right? These drivers with the opportunity to compete in the Subaru, the Ford, or the VW. Let's talk about the Subaru, for example, the WRX STI. It's named synonymous with rally and rallycross. The WRX STI supercar is a purpose-built rallycross car intended to go head-to-head with the likes of the VW Beetle and the Ford Focus rallycross cars. Designed and constructed by Vermont Sports Car, the Subaru packs 585 horsepower under its hood and applies the power to the road via an all-wheel drive system. It has a sequential gearbox that makes shifted breeze as you manhandle the car through the corners and oftentimes over jumps and deal with the ever-changing track surfaces of dirt and asphalt. So, well, hopefully these drivers aren't going airborne too many times this afternoon, and they're not going to be going over jumps like your typical rallycross track. These things are still made for this kind of action. Tight turns, not a lot of room for error, and of course those multiple different compounds on the actual racetrack that these drivers are going to have to learn to as well. Another big thing is, when you do a hill climb like this, a mountain climb, you're often going to have a co-driver with you, Josh, to be helping out. These drivers really don't have that aid, so they really need to have done laps here to kind of get this place as best memorized as possible.
Yeah, any sort of help that they are going to have is going to come in the form of a track map they bring up or something of the like. They're not going to have any help from anybody else. It is only going to be them inside of the car and how they can drive up this Mount Washington Auto Road. Getting ready now to get started. Had a little bit of a small delay, and we do apologize for that, but now we are getting ready to begin all of the festivities, and Daniel Eisch is going to be the first driver to hit the track, just waiting on a couple more drivers to make their way back into the pit lane, and then we're going to be getting underway. Evan, excited to see what these first couple of times that come in will be, but we've got a little bit to wait even for those first times, because we're going to have about 5 minutes until we see that first time from when the first driver is sent.
It's going to be at least 5 minutes, right? And we'll see if the first couple of drivers can get to the end again. I'm assuming that we'll see drivers with some discipline out of the gate, and we'll see the first couple of times trickle in. And then again, we're going to expect those times to drop as we get later and later. 3 attempts, and we are underway as Daniel Eisch is on track, and we are officially racing in the race to the summit. Eisch, the first driver out, going to start the long 7.6 mile trek up the hill, 138 turns he'll have to navigate in his Subaru.
You can see him already feathering that throttle, feathering that brake, making sure he is working his way up the mountain. Now, of course, none of these drivers really want to give up too much time in, but it becomes a sort of a catch-22 where you need to go pretty much flat out all the way up to the top. You cannot let a lot of time go, but at the same time, if you're pushing so hard, you run the risk of going off track. These rallycross cars are only about a couple feet shorter than the actual width of the track itself.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I think knowing Daniel here, he's going to take this first run pretty conservatively and just try to put down a time. But you make a good point. Someone could go up there and throw down a really fast time right now and put the pressure on people, make them run that fast time up the mountain. And who knows, maybe then they'll make a mistake. And it's a little bit of mind games there. I don't know if anybody's necessarily playing that strategy, but it is something to consider.
And it seems, Josh Fox as well, the next driver onto the racetrack as he rolls off from second position. One of those iRacing Rallycross World Championship competitors is on the clock as well. Bodie Cryer also rolling off, the third driver to tackle the mountain so far this afternoon. I mean, look at Fox getting the front end up in the air. I mean, I mentioned they're not going to be going up in the air too many times. That's because over some of these crests, we expect these drivers to be getting all 4 tires off the ground. But so far, for the 3 competitors on track, no major mistakes, and well disciplined as these drivers start to climb their way up.
And there we get another look at Josh Fox, and of course, with this being the first run of 3, really becomes just a anchor lap time. Just get a time on the board and go from there. And you can see there's the first cone destruction we're going to see of the night as Josh Fox sends a cone over off to the side. we'll see what these first lap times are going to be, because I think that's going to set the pace for the rest of the night, as we have another driver now taking to the track. Adam Alderton is going to get started, a junior racing driver from the United Kingdom, also competed in Racecraft TV Rallycross, so we know he's pretty versed in Rallycross competition.
Yeah, Adam's a fast driver. He's beaten me multiple times. And like you said earlier, Evan, as rallycross drivers, we're used to jumping on the track and everything like that. But it's very important here to keep all 4 tires on the ground, not only for control, but that's going to give you the most power out of those Subarus, those Fords, and those Volkswagens as well. And that's going to get fastest times up the mountain.
And so far, so good. Again, all these drivers clean out of the gate, which is, again, what we think is going to be the main objective here. But as you get closer and closer to the top of the hill, you'll see with Daniel Ace, the first driver who rolled off, you can start to see those trees start to thin out as you get higher and higher in elevation. And eventually, you're going to go all the way from that paved road up and onto the dirt as you clear the greenery up towards the top and kind of get up into the rocks as you get closer to 4,000 and then 5,000 feet of elevation. And there's the taking a look at Ace now. He's on the dirt. Now, the road's significantly thinner here as well than when it was paved, but of course, it goes without saying, Josh, the car's going to handle different on the dirt as well. So you just got used to attacking corners and a certain level of grip and tolerance on the asphalt in the bottom half, and now the road thins up, and that response is going to be a little bit more tricky as the car slides around.
Yeah, and even though these are four-wheel drive rally cars, they're, used to running on half asphalt, half dirt most of the time, or some sort of combination of the two. They still don't handle the best on dirt. I mean, they don't handle the best on asphalt either, don't get me wrong. Ian can attest to this. With them being four-wheel drive, you get on the gas, it is instant understeer. But going through the dirt, they are a lot more slidey. You're going to see a lot more sliding, and while you have that grip of the asphalt, so when you're in the thin part, once you get onto the dirt and you're going through those dirt turns, you have nothing to help you. That's when that handbrake is going to come in handy, and that's when a little bit more power under the wheels is also going to help you out.
I agree, and I will say this is a deceptive part of the track as well. You're getting towards the end, and you pretty much have to be full flat out the entire time, because if you're not, you're going to lose time. However, it's very sharp on either side of the road, and there's some weird spots as well where the roads are chopped off really, really bad. But as you were saying earlier, with that all-wheel drive, if you catch one of those and all 4 wheels are all of a sudden turn in the wrong direction, it's really hard to straighten it back out.
There's a look on board with Luke Krause as he also takes to the hill down towards the bottom. We now have at least 6 drivers actively on the racetrack. I believe everybody has been okay, although there may have been an off for Josh Fox, because Fox is off track. So I believe there was a mistake for the driver of the 12 machine that may have taken him out of his first attempt. So Fox unable to get all the way to the checkered flag on his first trip up the mountain. Meanwhile, Daniel Ace is almost towards the summit as Dorian Baptiste takes to the hill on the bottom. Ace's time is in a 5:27.742. That's the benchmark. And now everybody knows the time they are aiming for. Ace is done. Bodie Cryer going to be the next closest driver to the top.
We get a good look at Jacob Raffus here now working his way up the Mount Washington Auto Road. I'm very shocked about that incident for Josh Fox. I mean, he has been a multiple-time competitor in iRacing Rallycross World Championship competition, and it's one simple mistake. It's not even a large mistake he could have made. It could have been, one tire off the road, and then you're getting sucked off of the track, either over into the trees or rolling down the hill. It is millimeters that you need to be on the edge, especially if you want a fast time. That 5:27, it will stay for a little bit. I think it'll stay through these first runs, but I think once we get into round number 2 and the third run for a lot of these drivers, I don't think that time is going to stand for much longer. I think we're definitely going to get a little bit lower than that.
Yeah, and some of our viewers might be watching and seeing 5:27, 5:11 now by Bodie Cryer. You're going, well, Travis Pastrana, his record is a 5:28 up the mountain. And you got to keep in mind that these rallycross cars in iRacing do have a little bit more horsepower than those hill climb cars do in real life. And so that might be also a little bit of the reasons as well, as you're seeing some of these mistakes, as there's more power going up the mountain than even in real life. But that is one of the fun advantages you have with the iRacing circuit.
And now Alderton going to be the next driver, close it in on the top of the hill as well. It's funny, when you get to this point, you can see those sheer drop-offs, right? And I think as a driver, mentally speaking, it's going to make you a little bit more timid, even though if you were to go off the road and it was flat next to you down at the bottom of the track, going into a tree is no better than falling off of the edge. Let's see what Alderton can do. Slides in second position with a 5:14.202. So Alderton goes to second. It's Cryer 1, Alderton 2, and Aish 3. The drivers that have completed. Again, Fox was a DNF. He was unable to make it to the top of the hill. And Luke Kraus is going to be to the checkered flag soon as Zach Knowles, the driver out of Ontario, gets onto the road in the U99.
Zach Knowles, another one of those drivers from Racecraft TV Rallycross. It might have been RX2, and if a lot of drivers, or if a lot of viewers are watching that are recognizing a couple of the names from Racecraft TV Rallycross, RX2 was not the pro drivers. It was about one step lower than the pros. Zach Knowles set that league on fire in RX2, was one of the competitors for the championship, got beat out by Tor Andre Borisin, but still a great run for him as we have another top time in Luke Kraus, another one of those championship competitors for Fiercely Forward Racing. How about that lap time, Evan? 5:10.702. We just continue to get faster.
I mean, 0.4 of a second in over a 5-minute run. When you come out of the gate and it's a 0.4 of a second difference, I mean, there's tons of places for these drivers to make up time, right? We talked about how they're going to be taking it relatively early. Certainly Daniel H took it very timid on his first trip up the hill as we take a look live in with Josh Edmondson. But, I mean, just to see how tight those guys are after their first trip up the hill shows you how tight the competition is going to be for the $350 prize to our eventual winner.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really tight. And a lot of these guys know, too, out of the gate when they're going to have a good time and when they're not. And so it's really stressful as a driver. Like you said, it's going to be those 1/10 of a second that make the difference over a 5-minute time. There's only so much you can do in a certain amount of time and a certain amount of turns. As you see, Josh, he gets through that hairpin section really, really well. And that's where he actually can make up a lot of time, is that hairpin dirt section. You might see some guys go off there. And it's just a really technical part of the track as well. So that's one place where you can make up time. But yeah, it's really hard to stay consistent all the way up this mountain.
An onboard look with him rocking the VR goggles. But I feel like this kind of racing would be one of the best opportunities to get the full utilization out of those VR goggles. Just kind of making sure, looking out at the side of the car, that you're not too close to the edge. And, you know, Josh is somebody else that we've seen have a ton of success. He's most comfortable in the off-road trucks, but that does know a thing or two about these IRX cars, having competed with the All-Stars most recently. Is now I'm going to start to get into the conversation of, you know, drivers who have made those mistakes. I talked about Josh Fox, who was unable to do it, as we take a look in with Tommy Mäkinen, the driver out of Finland now, making his trip up the hill as well, because we talk about, well, just get your lap time in, that sets the basis, and then you could push, Josh, when we get to the point where if your drivers are making mistakes, right, going off track and wrecking out on their first trip up the mountain, then you're going to lose a lot of that security net of getting a time in and then being able to push it. You're going to have to take more risks. And I wonder if, you know, having already made a mistake, then being forced to be more aggressive, if that's going to get some drivers, and how much an early trip up the hill crash will kind of mess with these drivers.
I'm thinking in the first run, if you do have a crash out, that could definitely affect a couple of their confidence levels, a couple of their mojos, as Josh Edmondson just put in his lap time. As you can see, the celebratory smoke, a 5:05.450. I mentioned it. They continue to get faster as they continue to work up the mountain. We've had a couple of drivers who have unfortunately worked their way off, and I believe Jacob Raffus was one of them. Don't believe Dorian Baptiste made it up either, and then Josh Edmondson made it up. Now we have Zach Knowles. That'll be the next driver to come across the finish line here at the Mount Washington Auto Road. I don't believe we saw Garrett Maines go up the mountain, and I don't believe we saw Tyler Campbell try and work his way. Or Tyler Campbell's working his way up the mountain now, excuse me. We have gone through the first run, or the first send of each driver, I should say. And now we're going to start to go through the second run of each driver. Zach Knowles comes across the line. Not going to be the fastest time. It'll be 5th place at a 5:22.734. But now we're going right back to the beginning as Daniel Aish is setting his way up the Mount Washington Auto Road. Josh Josh Fox just got sent, and they're about to send Bodie Cryer up again. We'll see if anybody can beat Josh Edmondson's 5:05.450 up at the top. It is going to be a tall task, but we have a couple more drivers who are looking to work their way up the mountain, as it looks like next one to come by is going to be Tyler Campbell.
Yeah, and a 5:05 is a very, very, very fast lap. Watching the practices this week, we were seeing the fastest times somewhere in the realm of 5:01, even 5 minutes. But 5:05, especially in a competition, you got to think that's a really, really going to be a tough time to beat. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying that's the beat right now.
A 5:15.279 for Tyler Campbell, who completes his first trip up the mountain. He'll pull it over to a stop that'll slide him in 5th best. Still Edmondson, Kraus, and Cryer running 1, 2, and 3 for the moment. And you mentioned in Josh, now that Daniel H is back on the racetrack, drivers going to have second opportunities. Josh Fox is back on the racetrack after DNFing in his first attempt up the mountain. He is going to, of course, try to get a time in, but with limited attempts left, again, I think he's going to be forced, if not pressured, to be a little bit more aggressive on this trip up the hill. Just looking at some of the other drivers who are coming to the crest, looks like very close to the end of this one is Mike and some of the other drivers. So a lot of drivers pushing here to get to the distance. But like I said, you're already round 2 up the hill. So these opportunities are going to come hot and heavy.
Yeah, and as they all continue to work their way up the Mount Washington Auto Road, it is still happening. We are having some technical difficulties here at the producer's desk. We will be getting right back into the session as quickly as possible, but luckily we still have 2 commentators in the session as well, so we can continue to bring you coverage from inside. But as everybody works their way up, those first run times I think are eventually going to be beat. I think we will have Josh Edmondson work his way up the Mount Washington Auto Road as well again and beat his time. I think his time is going to be beat again as well. So I think we're just going to continue to go faster as we continue to go through these rounds, because there's just a lot of runs still to come. Everybody still has, if they haven't gone for their second run already, they have 2 left. If they haven't gone for their third run, they have 1 left. So still a lot of time left for these drivers to work their way up the Mount Washington Auto Road, and we'll see who's going to end up with the fastest time, because ultimately that is going to lead to the prize pool that we talked about, and FedR8tion helping to give all of our payouts on tournaments. And you can head to FedR8tion.com for more information about how they do their esports tournaments and setups, and completely putting you through all of the tournament setting up and producing process. So as we continue with the event tonight, and a lot of these drivers are still working their way up the Mount Washington Auto Road and thinking at one point we might see an under 5-minute time. Do you think that is going to eventually happen, or do you think we're going to see some drivers kind of skirt that 5-minute range?
Well, it's really tough too, because you got to think of the strategies that the drivers are taking now. You know, obviously everybody wants to be faster at this point, and Josh probably thinks he can improve on that time as well. But it is tough. You know, there is a limit to how fast you can go up to the mountain, and it's a testament to all of these guys to see how close they are to that limit of how fast you can get up the mountain currently on the service in these vehicles. That is, I've seen the people that take F1 cars up here. You know, fun things like that, but that's the fun of it being a simulator. Is that right, Evan?
That's always the best part of it, right? Is I think these drivers as well, you talk about how these Rallycraft cars on the service get a little bit more horsepower than what you're going to see at what, you know, likes of Pastrana and whatnot are doing, trying to set these records year after year. The other thing to keep in mind is these drivers have no fear of flying off the edge of the cliff either, because it's virtual as well, and that's why these drivers are willing to push it. And I think when we get down to the third runs, those third trips up the hill, we're going to be at the point where these drivers are going full send. They really don't care if they can't get all the way to the end. And talk about issues, Josh Fox, you saw it there for a moment. Fox with a major mistake towards the top of the hill. And I believe Josh Fox is not going to get to the end of run number 2. He does straighten it out, though, so he's back on track. Would it be the time for Fox? He DNF'd the first time up the hill. A major mistake, number 2, and he is still in the top 3. A 5:09.981 puts Josh Fox onto a podium, and that was with at least maybe 10 seconds thrown away, Josh, with that off-road mistake. So Josh Fox has got a ton of speed in that car, and I think can threaten for the very top position on his third and final run. Of course, Edmondson's top time overtaken by Mäkinen, who is on the cusp of a sub 5-minute lap time with a 5:01.013 as Luke Krause is going back up the hill.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that Mäkinen time came in while we were having our technical issues, but still goes to the top of the board. Great for Tommi Mäkinen. And if Josh Fox, with that mistake, still ended up at a 5:09, as we see Luke Krause go a little bit wide off the dirt, he's going to have to try and get it back onto the asphalt, and he does. If that time came in from Josh Fox with a mistake, I'm a little nervous, Ian, to see what he's going to do in this third run if he doesn't make a mistake going up the road.
Yeah, and from what I understand from the rules too, is the track limits are fine. If you go off the track, that doesn't invalidate your time, from what I understand. However, if these guys do get a slowdown penalty issued by iRacing and they don't adhere to it, then their lap time will be invalidated. So I think Josh is good to go. But yeah, that is scary, him going off the track and being as fast as he is. You got to wonder what he still has left in the tank there, Evan.
Yeah, Bodie Cryer just edges ahead by about 9/10 of a second. So Cryer's 5:09.043 to the top of the board. And now Adam Alderton, working his way up the hill. And he will put a 5:10.377 on the board as he gets almost all the way to the very top. So now looking at Jacob Raffos, the another one of the IRX World Championship drivers for Yakov down the hill. He was another one of the drivers, unable to record a time in the first trip up the hill. We've also yet to see times from Ray Zerka, Dorian Baptiste, Connor Parise, and Garrett Maines. So 5 drivers still without a time at all. And oh, that was a big off and out Baptiste. 2 major mistakes within a second of each other. We saw Baptiste get loose into the trees. He is done. And then I believe moments before that, Raffos almost went off track. And now he's off track. So Raffos 2 DNFs to start this hill climb. And he's going to put all his eggs in one more trip up the hill. Goes to show you how tough it is.
And we had 2 mistakes within 1 second on 2 completely different ends of this racetrack as well. We had the Jakob Raffos incident. Oh, Zach Knowles getting a little bit off track. He's able to save it coming over that small jump there. But Dorian Baptiste in 2 runs, both of them ended up in the trees. I will say I have not made it up the Mount Washington Auto Road myself. Each and every one of my runs has ended up in the trees while I'm trying to get up. But my poor sim racing skills aside, this goes to show how difficult of a track this is and how mistakes can really lead to completely deleted lap times. As Zach Knowles is just beginning his trek up Mount Washington Auto Road. He's going through the first sector. We've got Josh Edmondson on his final run right now. We'll see what he can put on the board.
Yeah, and it's really time for Josh Edmondson here. You got to know that he's really gripping that wheel as hard as he can, and knowing this is his time to lay down that time. He's got to get under a 5:01 if he wants to get that first place trophy, Evan.
Yeah, he's going to want to walk away with this. When you talk about how competitive these guys are, right? I mean, they come from all different, kind of homes, if you will, on the service, but the common denominator is off-road, right? Doesn't matter what car. They are all off-road guys for the most part. And listen, they want some bragging rights, right? Especially in a one-off event like this. The only thing that matters is the top 3. That's why I said I think when we get down to some of the third runs, these drivers are going to be more willing to junk the car trying to catch on time, because what do you get for 4th? A pat on the back, right? I mean, you're not carrying points over in the next week's hill climb. This is it. And with only the top 3 positions getting a share of that $500 purse, these drivers, again, going to want to push the limit. On with Edmondson as he is working on a lap right now. Remember, he is second best. His 5:05.449 stood the test of time until Tommi Mäkinen went to the top of the board in his first trip up the hill. We expect Edmondson to improve. I haven't seen any major mistakes out of the 58 thus far, so looking like a good lap time.
Oh, he's flying right now. You can definitely say that. And Josh, you got to know that these guys, that they're really pushing up the hill this time. But some of those guys that haven't laid down a lap time yet, you got to wonder. It's like, is this your time, or do you just want to put up something there so you have the result? It's a tough mental game that they have.
And the drivers that have not put in a time are honestly pretty surprising. Garrett Maines, multiple-time competitor in iRacing Rallycross and eNASCAR, has not put in a time. Connor Parisi, another one of those drivers for Jim Beaver Esports competing in Rallycross competition, has not put in a time. Jakob Raffas set the iRacing Rallycross world on fire in his rookie maiden qualifying series debut, got into the World Championship and beat relegation in the iRacing Rallycross World Championship this season as well in his rookie year, and he has not made it up the Mount Washington Auto Road. Just goes to show how difficult this track really is, Evan, and that we're having very, very successful sim racers struggle to get up the mountain. As Josh Edmondson puts in a 5:03.112, he's still 2 seconds off the pace from Tommy Makinen.
He does improve, but he doesn't gain any positions on the board, so he cuts 2 seconds off of the lap time, but stays in second position. And mentioning that we haven't seen a lap time logged by Garrett Maines, you're on board with his offer pad Subaru. His trip up the hill, having competed in the IRX World Championship from 2019 through 2021. Of course, we talk about what he does outside of the off-road stuff. A competitor in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. He's backing up and onto the dirt. And, I want to go back to you on this one, right? Talking about how, we're familiar with these cars, familiar with these different surfaces. But when it comes to a hill climb, just from the mental aspect of it, I was talking earlier about how, the road feels like it chokes up when you get higher up. As look at that onboard shot with Garrett Maines, bottom right, all of the wheel input. I mean, look at how aggressive. Oh, but there it goes.
Oh.
And I think that's going to count as run number 2 for Garrett Maines. So Maines now going to be left with only one opportunity, and it wasn't even a major error, but he just wasn't set up to turn into the next corner. You can't slow these cars down on the dirt to make them turn, and Maines is off track. He's done. I just want to ask, though, from the mental aspect of this, how different is mentally doing a hill climb than doing a lap at, a typical rally track?
Oh, it's way different. A rallycross track, you can sit there and you can put your laps in, and it's really easy to get that frequency of laps over and over and over again. Whereas the hill climb, every time you go up it, you're committing to at least 5-6 minutes of time. And I know this is really important to Garrett, because he really is working hard for this hill climb event. And so it's tough to see him go off. But like you said there, that spot, that it kind of tricks you because you think you need to slow down, but you really don't. And if you slow down and hit the brakes there, you just slide off like we saw there. So yeah, it really is a tough mental thing. As you get higher up the mountain, you realize where you're at, and it just makes it all that much harder to keep pushing the car, because any little mistake ruins that good lap time you have going already.
We saw it. Amazing.
Just watching these guys, Josh, they're bouncing all over the place, right? I mean, I just wonder, how do you tell what the limit is? We talk about how off tracks aren't a concern, so you can kind of, stick a tire off on the inside of a corner, right? I mean, you do have to be very disciplined as well, but I just love seeing them bounce around and see how out of control they are. And Connor Parisi is almost at the top of the board, or at the top of the hill, I should say. He's another one of the drivers I just wanted to mention that we haven't seen a time out of yet, and this is his second trip up the hill, I believe.
Yeah, and he's taking his Ford Fiesta now through the dirt. I wanted to mention Tyler Campbell's camera there. We have a handful of our drivers that have lended us their webcam feeds for tonight, and Garrett Maines is a very entertaining one. I cannot wait for his third run.
Yeah, I want that one back.
Yeah, I want that one back so bad, and I'm so upset we switched to it, and then he wrecks off the track. Garrett, if you're watching, I'm very sorry for that producers/commentators curse, but going back to Connor Parisi, great run for him so far. He has not made a mistake, and he's in the last sector of the lap. This is the most important part of the lap, I'd argue, Ian, because now he's working his way right up the mountain, and it could lead to a mistake because he knows he's almost to the finish. He kind of just gets in his own head, as we see Christian Steenberg put in his first time in P8.
Yeah, absolutely. You just get more and more aware of the fact that you're closer to the finish, and there's one more turn up here that is a killer for these drivers. It's a very hard left-hand turn. It's uphill and it's off camber as well, so you really need to brake well into it. If you lock up the brakes at all, you're going off, because here it comes right now. It's such a tight turn. You take this left-hand turn and it's off camber as you're going up, and that is such a hard turn to do. I will say, every time I go up this mountain, once I get past that turn, I let out a big breath, because I know that I'm one step closer to being to the top.
Dire relief. It certainly feels like we've seen more mistakes at the top of the hill than we've seen at the bottom, and I wonder if a little bit that is drivers starting to overthink, like I'm almost at the end. You're hyper aware that you don't want to make an error, or as you mentioned, that tricky corner, and I think the road as well, just thinner at points, could be more challenging. So Parise at 4 minutes and 55 seconds as he's almost reached the top. What'll be the time for the driver of the number 11 Ford? Final right-hand bend, not going to beat the 5:01, but where does he clock in? It is a 5:07. So he just squeaks underneath both Kraus and Cryer, and Connor Parise is into the top 3. It's important to note because our first driver to tackle the mountain is back on track, Josh, for a third and final time. So we are into the final round here already at Mount Washington, and Daniel H., who holds the 5:24, that's the second lowest of the times right now, was not able to get up the hill on his second attempt. Is going to, or he was able to get up the hill, I should say, but only improved marginally, 3 seconds under what his original time was. Is looking for big gains here on his last crack at it.
And he needs big gains as he sits in P11 right now. Only driver slower than him was Sean Langton. And interesting to see just the gradient of lap times we have. Of course, Tommy Makinen setting the leaderboard on fire with a 5:01. Then Josh Edmondson at a 5:03. Then you go back 4 seconds to find Connor Parise. You go back another 2 to find Bodie Cryer. You don't have to go far to find Luke Krause or Josh Fox or Adam Alderton. And then you go back to Tyler Campbell. It's another 3 seconds back. So we're seeing a lot of different lap times and really seeing the spectrum of drivers that we have here and just how tricky this track is. Of course, the longer a track is, the more differentiation in lap times as Daniel Eisch goes off the racetrack and into a tree. That's going to be the end of his third run.
Yeah, and that's really unfortunate. You could see that he was pushing it really hard there in that Fisher Disc Golf Bull Jet Subaru, but you could tell by the way he was bouncing off the track and everything like that, he knew it was just time to put in his lap time, Evan, and it's really unfortunate to see him go off there. But that, like we keep saying this whole night, it's just one little snap mistake like that, the car is gone.
And with the having, needed to gain so much time as well, I think he was very aware that, I just really need to push it up the hill, right? I mean, if I gain another 2 seconds, that that's marginal. That's not going to help me out much at all. So, I think that's an important thing to note as well, as he was kind of going for broke there on the last lap, just like many of these drivers are. Josh Fox, somebody who was very quick to get into the sub 5:10s with a 5:09.981, but remember, that first successful trip up the mountain for him was his second attempt. So this is his third and final time up the hill. He needs, if he wants to get into the money right now, to shave off about 2.8 seconds. That's the difference between his 5:09.9 and the 1:07.8, or 1:07.1, I should say, Connor Parise. So 2.8 seconds or so that he needs to get up to Connor if he wants to get into the money. Remember, $350 to the champion, $100 to second, and $50 to third. And I would not be shocked at all if Josh Fox can get a clean lap in here, Josh, if he could do it.
Yeah, Josh Fox, of course, he's at Hanson William Esports, says, take a look at the top of the board. Wow. Christian Steenberg, the first sub 5-minute time we've got, a 4:59.6. Wow. What a time that is up the road. I don't think anybody was talking about Christian Steenberg coming into this event, and now everybody's going to be eyeing that time. And guess what? He has one more run to go. He's going to be the last driver in this third run. Oh my goodness, we might actually have a nail biter on our hands here of who's going to get the win.
I just want to ask you there real quick. His first time was a 5:13. Then he goes to a 4:59. I don't think we've seen many drivers do 14 seconds of pickup from one lap to another.
You know, I think it might just be what we were talking about earlier. These guys want to take their first run safely and get a time on the board, and you're absolutely right. It's really hard to pick up that much time. So I think Christian's had that time in him all the entire way. He was just putting up a time and biding his time and waiting for the perfect time to put up that scorcher of a lap time. That is incredibly fast, 4:59 up the mountain.
Incredible stuff. Josh Fox, meanwhile, there's a look at his number 12 Subaru. He's getting closer to the top of the mountain, and the challenge has gotten that much more difficult because now if he wants to get into the money, instead of beating a 5:07, he needs to beat a 5:03. So that target has gone from 2.8 seconds up the road to about 8 seconds and change if he wants to get clear of Edmondson in third. And again, no real way to tell the interval, which is kind of the exciting part of it, because we got to wait to the end as Luke Kraus gets back on track. And another one of the drivers, as you take a look at the bottom right corner, utilizing the VR goggles. And you talk about somebody like a Garrett Maines who does the NASCAR stuff, the oval racing, and the big thing that you emphasize in that kind of racing, Josh, is being smooth on the wheel, minimizing inputs. That's not how a hill climb works.
It certainly can help. Of course, you need to be, you can see how much play these drivers are putting into the wheel. It is very much the opposite of NASCAR, where it's just sort of, smooth inputs like you mentioned, not trying to scrub so much off the tires. Well, it doesn't matter how much grip they scrub off of these tires. They're pretty much always going to have grip, no matter how much you try and scrub off of them. But they just put so much play into the wheel because this nature of racing with the shock setups, with these being four-wheel drive race cars, they race so much different that you basically need to put that much play into the wheel, or else you're not going to be in control of the race car. You have to fight it all the way up.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. When driving these cars, especially in this first section here before you get to the dirt, it's so windy and switchbacky that you're really fighting the car all the way up. There's so many bumps and undulations. Getting through that dirt part, it's really important to be smooth and precise with your inputs because you have to plan ahead. It's not like you're just sitting there steering the wheel. You have to know that you're coming up to a turn and you need to prepare ahead for that turn. Once you get up to the higher parts of the mountain, as I said earlier, it's very, very flat out. So there you want to be really smooth with your inputs as well. Sometimes you need to panic and you need to make a save, and that's what you see.
And you can see the leaderboard has adjusted once again. Despite the challenge, Josh Fox punches his way into the money. He gains from a 5:09 to a 5:02.310. So Josh Fox has booted Josh Edmondson out of the money. Fox now sitting in a podium position and looking for a payout here this afternoon. Bodie Cryer getting close to the top of the mountain as well. What can the number 5 machine do? Was very similar to Josh Fox on best time, similar to what Fox had as his previous best time. So we know that there is about 7 seconds of play there for Fox to have picked up. What does Bodie Cryer pick up in his final trip up the mountain? No, it goes off track. Bodie Cryer wants a little bit too much, and it'll be a DNF for the driver of the 5, and Bodie Cryer pushing to get into the money is not going to happen.
So unfortunate for Bodie Cryer, one of the best in Rallycross that we have here. And now we get a good look at Josh Edmondson. You mentioned it there, Evan. He got pushed out of the money places. Podium finishers will get a payout. So now, as Edmondson runs up the hill, he just, right as Josh Fox put in that time, he was getting ready to hit the track and get started with this time. So now that's all in his brain. He wants to go for that top spot, wants to beat Christian Steenberg, but at the same time, his goal should be just get back into those money places. He needs to make up about 1 second to do it, and with Christian Steenberg making up about 14 seconds earlier on tonight from run 1 to run 2, not wild to think that Edmondson might make up that extra second that he needs.
Yeah, knowing a guy like Josh, he's just going to use that time going down as motivation, and you can see he's really working that wheel up the mountain now. Evan, you got to really think here that these guys know it's coming down to the wire, and really all you can do to get that extra second or two of time is really going to be all the difference.
The one thing that he has over Fox is 2 clean laps already. Now, that doesn't help much in a conventional sense, right? Josh Fox is still faster than Josh Edmondson is right now. But the big thing is Edmondson just has a little bit more on-track time to know what happened, right? He knows what he did on his first lap. He knows what he did on his second lap. And he knows that the difference between those two is 2 seconds. I think that can help Josh calculate how far he needs to push the number 58 car if he's going to want to get back into one of the top 3 positions. Luke Krause almost at the top of the mountain. His best lap time of 5:09.837. He picked up 1 second from a 5:10, which was his first trip up the hill. He needs to pick up an additional 7 seconds if he wants to get into the money. Currently scored in 7th position, and you can see the current lap time. I think it's going to tick away. We'll wait to see as he comes through the right-hander. The checkered flag will fly. Cuts the spectators a little bit close there, and he goes 5:07.5. So he improves again, but not enough to get into the money, and that'll put Krause in position number 6.
We'll see now how that's going to affect the drivers at the top as Luke Krause goes for a celebration. Here comes the best camera angle that we are going to have of the evening as, oh no, Garrett Maines disconnected his camera. Come on, we wanted to see the GoPro footage.
He didn't want us jinxing him again. We're being cut off.
Okay, all right. Good.
That was, though, probably... We only had him for 10 seconds, but I got to say, and that's going to be one of the coolest onboard shots I think I've ever seen. It really gives you an idea of the madness. We can put the virtual camera on the roll bar. Nothing like showing you the actual in-sim shot there.
No, absolutely.
I definitely hope he does that for eNASCAR next year. That would be an amazing
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, that GoPro camera angle is great. He uses that on his streams as well, and it really gives you an insight into how much he's working to, make that car go up the mountain, because it really is. It is a lot of work. A lot of people say that these drivers, they may not be athletes, and I'm not trying to say they are Olympic athletes or something like that, but the physical toll that it takes to go up this mountain, I can attest to it after, days and days of practicing. My forearms have been sore. My biceps have been sore. It does take its toll on you.
We pick up Josh Edmondson. He is nearing the top of the mountain on his last run up the hill, trying to get back into a money position in this race to the summit, presented by Bioadaptives and powered by FedR8tion here on a Racecraft TV. Edmondson's first lap was a 5:05.449. He improved to his standing time now of a 5:03.112. He needs to get a second faster than his last best time if he wants to get into the money, and he's going to go up the hill now, going into the final part of this racetrack.
Let's see what Edmondson can do. You can see him getting very wide there, possibly having a little bit of understeer. Now he's going to go through the last couple of left-handers. He is almost up, and
oh no!
Oh.
There's the
Josh
mistake.
Edmondson is up and over. And you can see the dejection as the arms just fall to his side. And that tells me that if he's upset with the car flipping over, that he probably had green on the intervals in the car, right? I mean, if he was way behind and wrecked it out, you're pushing it, whatever. I don't know if we can get a second look at that, but the right rear tire just dipped off the asphalt there. And again, a time penalty is not the concern, but it was the transition from the asphalt down and into the rocks. And then when that right rear tire came back up, it just pitched the car sideways directly into a rock, and he barrel rolled it, and Josh Edmondson will not finish in the money this afternoon.
That is so unfortunate. I think we will have a replay here just in a moment, Evan, but man, Edmondson was on a run there, Ian.
Yeah, I'm really, I don't know. There are some spots up there once you get up higher in the mountain where the road drops off really sharp on the right or left-hand side here. Let's take a look, Evan, and see what happened.
You're going to feel it. The right rear right there dips off, and when it comes back, it just pitches that car to the left, and because those rocks are right there, he didn't stand a chance. If that's lower down the mountain and you go through a little bit of grass, you're going to be okay, but with those rocks on the side of the road up there and how thin that road is towards the top, you do not have that same margin for error, and what a tough break for those drivers. Just taking a look now as Macadon is getting ready to head back up the hill. Garrett Maines is almost at the top. Maines has yet to record a lap time, and he is off again. Garrett Maines gets one of those boulders that we were talking about. The car got just a little bit out of shape, and when he gets into the rocks, again, there is no recovering from that. He's going to keep it on track, but that is going to be a damaged number 2 Subaru, and Garrett Maines unlikely to be in the money as we see Mackinnon back on track. We thought his 5:01 was going to be the time, and then Steenberg undercut him, Josh, so Tommy Mackinnon with something to prove here, looking to make up 2 seconds, and also get to a sub-5 if he wants to win this thing.
And I think now he's got to try and minimize mistakes, right? Because now we're seeing in this third run, I think we expected run number 1 to be the mistake run for a lot of these drivers, but now we're really seeing the opposite. We're seeing now that they're putting so much effort into these runs and that they're so close to maybe getting a lap time in that they're starting to make mistakes on these final runs. As Garrett Maines comes up and across the line, we'll see what he puts in. Is it going to be anywhere near enough? A 5:12.237, and you can see a multi-time iRacing Rallycross World Championship competitor in Garrett Maines is only good enough for P9.
Well, that was with major mistakes too, Ian, so we know that Garrett's going to be kicking himself thinking about what if, because he had a pretty major off that we saw, got back on track with the damaged car, and still managed right now what's the top 10 time.
Yeah, and Garrett's been working so hard all week. All these drivers have been to get those lap times and stuff like that. So you got to know that he's disappointed because there's so much more that he could have put down there on the table, Evan. I'm interested to see, though, Tommy with his real-life rally experience being the Finnish Junior Rally Champion in 2017. I'm excited to see what time he's going to put down this time up the mountain.
Yeah, you talk about the real-life experience is something that I talked about off at the top, how some of these drivers have that crossover experience, and Tommy's been able to take that success that he's found in the real world and translate it to a very successful rallycross career here on the iRacing service. Remember, his 5:01.013 is the second fastest time on track. That was the only time he recorded. He DNF'd on his very first opportunity to go up the hill. So again, I mentioned that Edmondson may have had an advantage being able to have 2 full laps in and be able to know how much more aggression gave you X amount of time. Ended up not working out for Edmondson, but Mackinnon's going to have to just push based on what he did the first time through. He's almost to the top of the hill. Connor Parise is nearing the crest. Parise put down a 5:07.126. He needs to gain about 5 seconds and change if he wants to get into the money. Right now, the benchmark for that still Fox's 5:02.311. Let's see if Parise can do it.
See what the new London, Connecticut driver can put in. Weird seeing the Jim Beaver Esports paints on a Ford Fiesta. Normally, it's Connor Parisi runs it on a Subaru, but we've got it on a Ford Fiesta here, one of the lesser used rallycross cars, but might have a little bit of an advantage for the Mount Washington Auto Road we heard earlier, so a little bit of a strategic play from Connor Parisi. P5 from him at a 5:07.12. Great run for him, as I believe Tommy Mackinnon just made a mistake going up the road, Evan, and he is off the racetrack. He will not improve on his 5:01.013. That is it for Tommy Mackinnon, the only driver now who can, the only drivers who can knock off Christian Steenberg as Christian goes on for his final run would be Parisi, Langton, and Jakob Raffus, as Raffus is going to go last in this round due to some connection issues he was having.
Yeah, so for Mackinnon, he didn't get that particularly far up the hill, and that is a very rare mistake for Tommy in the number 95. So he's off the road. His night is done. Talking about Connor Parise, he does improve to a 5:05.9, but it's not enough to get into the money. He sits at a 5th position, and that leaves only Sean Langdon and Christian Steenberg on the racetrack right now. Again, we are waiting on Jakob Raffos to get onto the racetrack. Oh, and there's a big mistake down the hill. Steenberg, the fastest car, is going to make a mistake. Again, his 4:59 was the top of the board, and we saw Mackinnon make a mistake. We saw Fox unable to get there. We saw Edmondson make a mistake, guys, and very quickly, Ian, the challengers to Steenberg started dropping like flies. Ooh. Right there, he just gets that gap and a huge bounce. very clearly ending his run, but it may not take him out of competition to win this thing because only Langdon and Rafos, I believe, are the two drivers who will have an opportunity to beat him.
No, yeah, Evan, I'm sure he feels a lot better still holding on to that top spot there. And I could tell from coming through that section, watching on the camera, that he was absolutely flying. Just taking out those cones with reckless abandon and then just continuing up the mountain. He was absolutely cooking. So it doesn't just surprise me to see him go off there. I'm not saying he wasn't in control, but you could tell that he was definitely pushing that pace this time.
To look on with Sean Langdon, and another mistake. That's the same spot on the racetrack that Garrett Maines had his mistake on his final lap. Exact same spot on track. And look at the damage on the front of that VW Bug. That's the big thing that hurts him there, is again getting into the rocks towards the top of the mountain. The damage that it causes on these cars. Langdon unlikely to improve from a 5:16. Right now he's 11th. I'm sure he would have loved to get 4 seconds out of it and get a top 10, but I'm not sure how feasible that is after the big mistake.
We'll see when he climbs his way up the hill, as he still only needs to make up about 4 seconds, but with that off track, I believe he might have lost 4 seconds from his time. So we'll see what he is able to do, and we'll see also if Jakub Rafos ends up making his way up the auto road, because he was having some connection issues and I believe continuing to have connection issues. Yes, he did. He just disconnected from the server due to incoming packet losses. Langdon comes across a 528 or 520.974. I believe that is going to just about wrap up our runs up the hill, and I believe, waiting on official word from race control here, Evan, Christian Steenberg might have just gotten the win.
And what a drive it was. Again, that huge 14-second pickup from his first timed lap, which came on his second attempt up the hill. And again, I think the advantage may have gone to going later. Ian, I don't know, what do you think? I mean, you have so many drivers. Again, everyone's on track at the same time, so you actually have very little out of the car time, right? I mean, most of the time when the guys that you're racing against are on track, you're on track as well. Christian had the opportunity to see Fox unable to top him, Mackinnon to make a mistake, Edmondson to make a mistake, all before he got into the car the final time. And even on his second run as well, I'm just curious if being deeper in the order and kind of knowing the assignment a little bit better may have helped him strategize this one.
Yeah, like I said earlier, when Josh put down that, I believe it was that 5:05 time in the first round, I said that was going to be hard to beat, and now we have 4 or 5 guys now running those, and so that's incredible. It just goes to show how talented these guys are. But yeah, I mean, Christian running a 4:59, that's just absolutely incredible. And it's really great to see the rest of these guys too are also talented. So it just goes to show how difficult it is to run up this mountain. And you're right, there isn't much of a break between rounds, but I will say some of these guys that are used to the real life racing, that's what rally driving is like in real life. You know, all those cars are going at a minute interval off of each other and everything like that. So I think it's a nice change of pace for these guys that are really into that rally aspect of iRacing too. I think we have an official word though, Josh, is that correct on who our champion is?
We do, and the champion will be Christian Steenberg. Evan, you're going to be standing by with him now.
Well, let's talk with your hill climb champion in tonight's Race to the Summit, presented by Bioadaptives and powered by FedR8tion. Christian Steenberg tops the chart with a 4:59.599 and takes the win. Christian, congratulations. Only driver to get sub 5 minutes. Just tell us about that lap.
Yeah, thanks. So, like, the first lap, I was pushing, like, all the way and running the first sector, but managed to keep it out of the trees, so I just used that as like a practice lap going into the second run, and for the second run nearly everything went right. I'm pretty happy with that lap.
Of course, going up against the names here, right? I mean, you're able to squeak out against Tommy Mackinnon. You got Josh Fox, Josh Edmondson, Connor Parise. I mean, a lot of these guys, we saw their time slowly improve, right? You certainly did that as well. But, you know, most guys would go out for their first lap, get a time on the board, and then go out and push it, right? Get anywhere from 3 to 7 seconds, I think we saw was the average pickup time. Your fast lap ended up being 14 seconds faster I mean, would that confidence come in knowing that you could push it that much further, to get that much time when other drivers seemingly were making smaller improvements?
Yeah, so coming into this, I came in the mindset with like all 3 runs I'm going to push like 100%, and probably maybe one of them I won't crash out. And in the first one, I spun out, but then kept going and just used that to find the limits. And then after I found those limits in the second run, I just pushed as hard as I found in the first run.
How would you compare doing the Mount Washington Auto Road compared to some of the other stuff you do here on the iRacing surface as such a unique challenge that this kind of competition is?
Yeah, it's a whole different ball game, especially with the amount of corners and stuff. It's like pretty tricky to memorize the whole track and which corners are coming up to you. But it's extremely fun and addicting to like get that perfect lap, if that's even possible.
Well, you get a sub 5 minutes, and I think that is certainly quite the accomplishment. And for your troubles tonight, as the event champion, you walk away with $350. So we'll let you get out of here and celebrate. Before we do, Christian, anybody want to say hi to while we got you?
Hi to my team U6T and my other team Alpha House Racing, and that's pretty much it. Thank you guys.
Your event champion tonight from Mount Washington, Christian. Thanks for chatting and congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, he gets sub 5. It's a 4-minute, 59.599 second lap that crowns Christian Steenberg as the champion of tonight's Race to the Summit, presented by Bioadaptives and powered by FedR8tion. Josh Fox comes home in third position tonight with a 5:02.310, and our Josh Lee is with him.
Well, a good run for you, Josh, coming up the hill climb. And what were the challenges trying to work your way up the hill? Because we saw a lot of drivers succumb to those challenges and end up off the road or off and into the trees.
Yeah, absolutely. Just keeping them all on the pavement was the biggest thing, and balancing the security versus speed all the way up. Kind of had to live with sort of like your best average, kind of reach a handshake agreement with the hill if possible to set a decent time, and luckily was able to make something happen and work right on the third run.
And of course, working your way up the hill, a third place for you, 5:02.311. What kind of times were you running in practice in the qualifying sessions and coming into tonight? Were you expecting to get a 5:02.311? Or were you expecting to be slower, quicker?
Honestly, expected a bit better than that, to be honest. Had a couple of really rough sectors, but in the third run, I had a couple of optimal personal bests, and so I guess I can live with that. And yeah, just making it up and securing a podium, it's a big deal against this group of drivers. A lot of talent here, so definitely glad to get one decent one in there.
And a unique event, of course, with it being a hill climb. You know, you competed a bit in Racecraft TV Rallycross during the World Championship season, and of course that was unique in its own right with Rallycross heats, LCQ feature. But here, you're not racing other drivers on the racetrack; you're just racing them on the stopwatch, going up the hill and not even really completing a lap. It's not a lap; it doesn't go in a circle. You have a start and a finish. So, do you like this different sort of event, and are you open to doing more hill climb events in the future? Because we see that it is very, very entertaining, at least up here, and the chat room's having a great night.
Oh, for sure. It's entertaining to watch and probably even more entertaining to drive. And to be honest, the stage rally type format is something I hope to see more of across iRacing in general. I've done a bunch of WRC esports for Williams esports competition the last couple of years, and that was critical for developing the kind of memorization and stage rally kind of mindset. So I did feel pretty well suited to run an event like this.
Well, thank you very much for joining us up here in the commentary booth, Josh. Congratulations on your third place finish here in the Race to the Summit.
Hey, thanks a lot. Thanks to Josh and Racecraft TV for putting on the event. Thanks to you guys for a great broadcast. And of course, can't go without thanking Williams Esports, Hanson Motorsports, Ben Q Miner, Chill Blast, PC, Fanatec, Playseat, One All Sport, Team Racer, Hicing Field Pedals. And yeah, thanks again.
Thank you very much to you for joining us once again. That is Josh Fox, third place finish for him in tonight's hill climb. And we continue with the post race with Connor Parisi. He got fifth place tonight, standing by with Ian Fisher.
Hey Connor, how's it going? He ran a 5:05.9. That was good for fifth place. A very respectable finish, I will say. But how do you feel about it? Do you feel like you could have been faster up the mountain?
Yeah, I feel slow. My very first run, I threw it into the trees like almost immediately in the very first corner. So I had to use my second one as kind of a banker, kind of take it easy. So I just had the one run to really push it, and it just wasn't enough.
And I understand that it's a tough run up the mountain. Now that leads me into my next question, though. What did you do for preparation, Connor? I mean, did you break this mountain into little parts, or did you just take as many runs at it as you could and just hope for the best?
Yeah, I just took a whole lot of runs at it. Just making sure you knew exactly what corner was coming up, what bumps to look out for, braking zones, that kind of thing, and making a couple tanks on the setup as I went, and it just also I switched cars kind of like halfway through prep. That probably wasn't super optimal. I think I was the fastest for it. I'll take that.
Yeah, actually, tell me a little bit about that. You see a lot of guys running up the mountain in the Subaru. Did you find an advantage with a Ford later in your practice sessions? Do those smaller cars maybe make things a little bit easier? Is it a little more nimble for you?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier to fit into some of the tight squeezes. The Subaru is nice and big. It's good on the dirt, and it's fairly stable in the high-speed stuff, but the lower-speed stuff, the Fiesta was a little bit better for me, and there was a couple little cheeky spots where I could be real aggressive with some big bumps that the Subaru just gets thrown off, and the Fiesta absorbs it real nice, so that's why I made that switch.
Well, that aggression got you into fifth place with a 5-minute and 5-second lap time. Is there anybody you want to thank, Connor?
Yeah, I got to thank you guys for putting on the show. Thank Trevor Teal and Josh Evanson for putting on the event, and everyone at Jim Beaver Esports. We got Fistful of Bourbon, Next Level Racing, Polaris Razor, Vision Wheel, and General Tire.
And that was Connor Parisi on Racecraft TV. Thanks a lot, Connor.
Thanks, fellas.
A big thanks to all of our drivers, not only to the guys up towards the front for sticking around and chatting with us, but of course all the drivers for being a part of this event and giving us a great show to talk about. And Ian, I'll go back to you first on this one to recap it. The big question at the start of the night was, would we get sub 5? We did. Steederberg got the job done, and you have to think, right, if they had 4 tries, 5 tries, 6 tries, right, I mean, how low those times could have gotten. But despite the talent level, there were very few, if any, drivers that got 3 timed laps on the board of the 3 attempts. I think that speaks to how challenging this hill climb is.
Evan, this was so much fun to watch, and I just want to quickly thank you guys for having me here as well. But yeah, just watching these guys go up the mountain was incredible. As a student of rallycross myself and this rally driving, for me to get a firsthand watch of these guys is really just something else. And you're absolutely right. I said it in the first round. I don't think we're going to see anything faster than a 5:05, and we got a 4:59. So that's just incredible, and I'm glad people were able to see that, honestly.
You have 5 drivers able to go 5:05 or lower. And in the end, Josh, it's Christian Steedberg. We spent so much time tonight talking about the iRacing Rallycross World Champions, the real-life pros from off-road to 2 wheels and 4 wheels and all the different disciplines. And in the end, Steenberg tops all of them.
Nobody was talking about him. Not a single one of us said Christian Steenberg was going to win that thing. And he comes out and runs a sub 5-minute time, the only sub 5-minute time that we had all night long. He beat Tommy Mockinen, Josh Fox, Josh Edmondson, Connor Parisi, Luke Krause, Bodie Cryer, Adam Alderton. The names just get bigger and bigger as I go down. He beat Garrett Maines. Maines barely got into the top 10. Goes to show how difficult the stage rally and how difficult this hill climb track is. Hopefully we see more special events like this with this caliber of drivers on it, because man, we saw some heartbreak and we saw an unexpected driver at the top.
And in the end, $500 goes to the top three, including $350 to our champion, Christian Steenberg. Until next time, though, that is it for us here tonight from iRacing's virtual Mount Washington Auto Road in Coos County, New Hampshire. On behalf of the entire team behind the scenes for making this possible, for Josh Edmondson and the admin team, for our sponsors, Bioadaptives and The FedR8tion, for making this possible as well, for the Racecraft TV team, that includes Dougie Beard for the track cameras and Esteban Ballo on the car cameras as well, and for your broadcast team tonight. For Ian Fisher, Josh Lee, and myself, Evan Pasoko, I want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate Christian Steenberg, the champion of the mountain. He wins the inaugural Race to the Summit on Racecraft TV. We'll see you next time on the Hill.
Welcome to the FedR8tion. Compete on the global stage while at home. A new route to the esports scene. Enter tournaments, crush your opponents, and take home the prize pools. Or create your own